Hey guys, I'm Dan from Shastabubba Adventures, and today I'm going to be doing a first look review at my new raincoat, which is the Enlightened Equipment Visp. If you're new to the channel, hey, please think about subscribing so you don't miss out on future gear reviews, and thanks for watching. So if you happen to see the videos of my Bob Marshall Wilderness Traverse from this summer, then you'll know already that I got kind of fed up with my ultralight raincoat and decided to trash it. And so now instead I'm going with this one, which is the Enlightened Equipment Visp. Now, a couple of things about the Visp. First off, check out the sizing, seems just right. This is a large, and for reference, I am 6 foot and 200 pounds, and the room seems just right. I'm wearing a puffy layer underneath right now, which I normally would be in most situations. And it's got a good drop tail hem in the back and extra long sleeves. Now the Visp is technically a 3-layer ultralight fabric. So if you see it up close, you think, no way, it's so thin, how can that be 3 layers? Well, actually it is a 7D ripstop nylon on the outside, and in the middle is a waterproof breathable membrane, and on the inside is a treacle lining to make it smooth against the skin. And they sandwich that all together so it seems like just one thickness, but it's actually 3 layers. So the first 2 questions that everybody wants to ask with the rain shell is, how waterproof is it and how breathable is it? So in order to talk about those things, we need to get a little technical. First, with waterproofness, that is measured by something called hydrostatic head, and sometimes you'll see that abbreviated as mmH2O. So basically what that means is, if you imagine a column of water, the question is, how tall would the column of water need to be in order to create enough water pressure to seep through the fabric? And then that's measured in millimeters. That's the millimeter H2O. And the number that comes in for the Visp is 20,000 hydrostatic head. So what does that mean? Well, just for comparison, I wanted to talk about 2 other rain shells. First, the Patagonia Torrent shell, and second is the Z-Pax Virtus. The Torrent shell is a good example of a mainstream shell, and the Virtus is a good example of a fellow cottage industry ultralight technical shell. So as it happens, both of those also have 20,000 hydrostatic head, just like the Visp. So 20,000 is a very good amount of waterproofness. It would be hard to get more than that without getting a really heavy shell. And less than that, sometimes you see around 10,000, really is more of a water resistance versus waterproofness. The other thing to look at is breathability, and this one gets even more technical, and I'm not even going to try to explain this because I don't really understand it. But basically you see this equation that says G divided by M squared divided by 24 hours. That stands for moisture vapor transition rate. Sometimes you see that abbreviated as MVTR. So the number of that for vapor transition rate for the Visp is actually 75,000, which is a very high number. For comparison, the Virtus is actually 56,000, and that's considered very good. And the Torrent shell, they don't even list it because they probably figure most people looking at a mainstream company aren't gear nerds and aren't into all those technical details. Now, talking about breathability, I do have to go off on my soapbox for a minute and just say breathability in ultralight shell for backpacking is a bit of a red herring, because the truth is that backpacking is just a very strenuous activity, and you're going to be creating an enormous amount of moisture through your sweat as you're climbing up a mountain carrying a pack. And there's never been a fabric in the world that's been created that can keep up with that amount of moisture to transfer it to the outside. So in reality, breathability, it's a nice thing to think about, but don't make that your make or break detail, because it's kind of not that important. What really matters is being able to adjust things. So main zipper up and down as you work more, and also something like pit zips, which obviously the Virtus has. Now, I have to admit that in the past I have foregone pit zips because I wanted to save the weight and I didn't really know how effective they would be, so I'm really excited to test that out with this coat in the long term and see if it makes a big difference. I think maybe it will now that I've had a little more experience. Might be worth actually doing. Now, as far as weight goes, the Visp comes in at 6.24 ounces or 177 grams, and that is almost exactly identical to the Virtus from Z-Packs, and that's an awesome ultralight weight. I can feel just fine taking a very reliable waterproof shell even on my August hikes at that weight. And the Torrent shell is actually double that weight. It's actually 12.5 ounces or 355 grams. Thank you, Mr. Raven. Now, the Visp has an adjustable hood, and there's two adjustments. First, there are the adjustments on the side, and second, there's adjustments side to side in the very back of the hood. Now, a lot of the rain shells that I've had in the past actually had more of a vertical adjustment, and that, I think, doesn't work very well because the more you cinch it down, the more it pulls it back on your head, and then it just gets less and less secure instead of more secure. And this just seems to work a whole lot better. You can see how it just really snugs it down on my head. I'm amazed at just what a difference it makes just to have that lower down side-to-side adjustment on the hood. Also, it's worth mentioning that there's a slightly older review of the Visp on YouTube by none other than Andrew Skirka, and his one complaint was he noticed that the adjustments came out the inside instead of the outside, and he was a little concerned about that, rubbing against his face if he slept in the shell. Well, Enlightened equipment must have listened to him because they moved it to the outside, so no concerns about that. There is a Velcro tightening closure on the sleeves, and they have tailored the sleeves to be extra long. You can see how it covers most of my hand. Now, I wasn't sure if I would like that detail to start with because I tend to like things that fit snugly. However, I have been hiking a few times when I was wearing fleece gloves and it was raining and they would get wet, and that's okay because fleece stays pretty warm when it's wet. But there was also a wind, and the wind just cut right through those gloves and the insulating ability was lost. So I had thought about investing in some E-vent over mitts, but those are kind of expensive for something that I hardly ever would use. So I'm really excited to try these out and see if the extra long sleeves will avoid that problem, because I think that even using trekking poles, it's going to cover enough of my hand that the wind will be blocked and I won't have to worry about that. And I have noticed that just by folding it over the Velcro closure, then it stays pretty nicely snug. I've been using this just around town, driving to work and walking around town, and I've had them folded most of the time and they've stayed folded, so I'm pretty happy. I think that'll work out good. The zipper is a number 3 waterproof zipper, and it's a left-hand zipper, which takes a little getting used to. Personally, I think it's probably a good thing because it forces me to slow down and pay attention, because you want to be a little careful with the number 3 zipper. That can be something that might be an issue over a long term, but not if you're careful with it. Okay, let's talk about price. The Visp comes in at $190 for the base model, and you add $10 if you add in the pit zips, so $200 with the pit zips. For comparison, the Virtus, which has the same weight, is actually $259, so $60 more. The Patagonia, the Torrent shell, is actually quite a bit cheaper. You can get that for about $160 or so, and you probably can find discounts because it is a mainstream company. You can more often find discounts on it. However, for me personally, I'm happy to pay the extra $30 or $40 to save double the weight of the shell. So this is the part of the video when I should be telling you that this was a completely unbiased review. However, that just isn't true here in this case. So Enlightened Equipment happens to be one of my favorite companies ever since I got my quote from them about 5 years ago. Tim Marshall is the owner of Enlightened Equipment, and he actually takes the time to read through the forums and make comments on the forums, which I've really appreciated, and he even made a comment on one of my videos. So it wouldn't be fair to say I'm not biased. Also, this Visp was sent to me at no charge, and there's no agreement that I have to do a positive review, which actually was a concern for me as it was coming in the mail, and I'm doing my happy dance for free gear. And I started thinking, what if I don't like it and I have to say bad things about it? That would be terrible. Well, thankfully, as it turns out, the Visp is perfect, I think. It's hard to say anything negative about it. The only two things I can kind of think of is a little concerned long term about the number 3 zipper and how durable that will be. And just a personal nitpick is it's very common for ultralight rain shells not to have any pockets. And that kind of bugs me. I think it's worth a ½ ounce or something to have a hand warmer pocket, not for warming my hands, but because when I'm wearing it around camp, and usually I'm cooking and doing stuff and maybe going to get water and we got the bear spray in my pocket, I need pockets. So I would like to do that personally. Sometimes the ultralight companies will add an Napoleon pocket, which is pretty much useless. Who uses that? So if it were my preference, I'd like to see that as an option. I usually end up kind of hiking that up and using the pockets of whatever puffy I'm wearing instead. So that's just a minor quibble. I believe if I would have started from scratch and done all the research looking for the right coat for me, I would have settled on the Visp. So thankfully, that's not an issue. And so looking forward to taking this out, really putting it through its paces. And I'm going to come back again and do another review, a long-term review, probably about this time next year, and let you know how it's all worked out. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Take care, and I'll see you next time.